Hi, this is Josh Kulp for Daf Shevui. We are continuing to learn the Masechet Avodah Zarah, and we are on Daf Lammed Bet, page 32. And again, this is a preview, a discussion of some of the topics that are going to come up on the page that we're going to learn this week. So the first case is the case mentioned in the Mishnah. The Mishnah continues to deal with cases that I would define as marginally wine associated. In other words, things that have wine in them but are not exactly wine. And the first case that we come up with is the case what they call Hadrianic earthenware. And as the Talmud explains, this seems to be pieces of earthenware shards that were heavily soaked in wine. And then when Roman soldiers were out on the road, they would put them back into water, and the wine from inside the absorbent earthenware would go back into the water and give it some taste, some flavor, perhaps a low level of alcohol. This was a way of traveling with wine in those days, a little bit like instant coffee might be in our days. So the Mishnah prohibits them not just from using the wine, but you cannot even derive benefit from this earthenware. Now, this leads to a very interesting discussion. Because this isn't wine, but earthenware, what if you want to use such an item or other such items, but not in order to gain benefit from the wine, but in order to use the pottery? Or, for instance, a wine skin that you want to use for something else, such as making a seat to sit on your donkey with, or a blanket, or some kind of covering for your donkey, or any other use. In other words, there's cases where there's an item that's prohibited because of the wine that's absorbed into it. Can you use it for another purpose besides that wine? And there's a machoket, a dispute among the Amoraim. It's an interesting concept that's called in Hebrew rotzeh b'kiyumo al yedei davar acher, that he wants it, but not for the purpose of the wine, but for some other thing, for davar acher. And then we go on interpreting the Mishnah, where there are the prohibition of one of my favorite objects. Always reminds me of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. I hope you don't remember that movie because it wasn't a very good movie. But there's a scene where Indiana Jones is fighting the high priest of Avodah Zarah, I guess, and the high priest likes to take people's hearts out with his hand. Right, he's got very strong hands, and he can just reach in there and take out your heart. So the makers of that movie seem to have known the Mishnah. The Mishnah refers to a type of Avodah Zarah, not taking human hearts out, but where priests of Avodah Zarah, of idolatry, would take animal hearts straight out of the animal by making some kind of incision while the animal was still alive. And if someone finds a skin with that hole in it, they can't use it because you would know that it was in Avodah Zarah. I hope when you're remembering this daf, you remember my analogy to Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, one of my favorite associations. Then there's a couple of sugyot about people going in and out of places of idolatry. The question is, when can we assume that any objects in their hands will be the result of interactions with idolatry, the proceeds of selling things for idolatry, whether they're coming or going? The Mishnah only seems to talk about non-Jews, but Shmuel in the Gemara brings up the discussion about what a Jew's both going to and coming from, either places that are specifically of idolatry or fairs where idolatry might have taken place. These fairs seem to be marketplaces, but it was very hard to distinguish in the ancient world between the market economy and the religious economy, and probably through the medieval period that would be true as well. And it's a little similar to the discussion that we had in the beginning of the Masechet about the idolatrous festival, where it was both an economic festival but also a place of idolatry. And the final bit of the sugya, which really takes us into the next page, talks about skins that are lined with pitch, and the pitch begins to absorb the wine taste. The pitch was put there to seal the skin, and therefore it talks about the status of skins that belong to non-Jews, skins used for holding wine, whether they were covered with pitch or not. But that's mostly on Daf Lammed Gimel, so you'll have to wait for next week's video for that. Good luck learning, and as always, I would encourage you to ask questions and to participate on our Daf Shevui Facebook discussion.